Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Carol Switzer. I'm with Paeradigms. And I just want to quickly say we are here with RECI. RECI is the Swiss network of individuals, people working in the field of education and international cooperation. And this is from individuals to big educational institutions, NGOs, and anyone operating in this sphere. RECI has working groups and that are designed to promote mutual learning and share experiences with each other. The Lifelong Learning Working Group is the group that's hosting this event. And we believe that learning is not something that just starts and stops, that education is a continuum that extends well beyond the years of formal training. So on behalf of the Lifelong Learning Working Group, Oula, Samir, Marianne, Nina, and Jessica, I would like to thank RECI for the opportunity to have this learning experience together and for their support in this event. So what we would hope to accomplish today, this idea is born out of our mutual learning discussions in our group and the need we felt for understanding and sharing experiences about competency frameworks, which made me immediately think of the work we've done with Romain, which is why he's here. So we hope today to listen and hear about a concept of green competencies and the importance of values, attitudes, and mindset beyond the technical skills that people associate with green skills, and how these attitudes and values, for example, are driving sustainable practices no matter what sector. We'll hear something about the ETF model for linking sustainability with green competencies. ETF is European Training Foundation. We'll discuss implications of this green transition, what this reskilling, upskilling, and these new green jobs, what impact do they have on the society and the labor market? And then we will be able to exchange examples with all of you and hear your experiences in this area.
For the rest.
Thank you, everyone, for giving us a little bit of insight on who you are and what you have to offer. So at this point, I would like to introduce Romain properly. Romain Boitard is a specialist in green transition, and he focuses on education and labor market research. He worked for the EU Foreign Services for 16 years in Mozambique, Afghanistan, Montenegro, Guinea-Bissau, and Albania. He's now based in Torino, Italy, with the European Training Foundation. ETF, for those of you who know, it's a European public agency. Romain has led research on green jobs, mostly outside of Europe, and exploring how educational systems can adapt to better prepare learners for all of the changes that are coming about due to the net zero economy. He regularly publishes his insights in academic outlets and contributes to discussions on integrating environmental sustainability into job creation and learning frameworks. So he's bridging into the labor market. Romain is delighted to hear your criticism, and he invites critical analysis of the existing approaches, and he's curious to hear your perspectives today. So we're delighted to have Romain with us today, and we hope that you'll be as inspired by his work as we are. So Romain, over to you.
I'm a big fan of Paeradigms, so when Carol called me, I immediately accepted the challenge. We already talked about what ETF is, so maybe just to talk about my personal role at ETF. So I lead the team on the green transition. And so naturally, we need to keep a keen eye on green skills frameworks in terms of demand and particularly the deployment. And so for the next 20 minutes, I'm going to basically share our current insights through data. We always insist on evidence-based. So next slide, please. So we cannot talk about green jobs and green skills without first discussing sustainability. Green jobs are not something nice to have. They are an obligation that we collectively owe to our children and descendants. So decarbonizing our economies determines human survival. And I don't need to explain the visual that you have in front of you. We all know that we are very far from the net zero path that we all signed up for. But just to make things more complicated, carbon emissions are only one out of 9 problems that we face as inhabitants of this planet. Next slide, please. So we easily get confused about what really matters when it comes to sustainability. So I had to bring one earth science slide, and please bear with me. It may seem a little bit complicated now, but it will become clearer in about 2 minutes, I promise. So here you can see the 9 processes that regulate the stability and resilience of the Earth system for human life. And also our ecosystems. So the concept of planetary boundaries was developed to identify and quantify the limits within which humanity can safely operate on Earth. So the framework finds there are 9 key Earth systems that are critical for maintaining the planet's stability. And so naturally, these boundaries can help us guide human activity so that we don't trigger catastrophic environmental and irreversible changes. So let's briefly go through them, very briefly, I promise. We'll start with climate change. So that tracks the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, which cause global warming. You all know that. Biosphere integrity tracks the loss of biodiversity and species extinction, which disrupts ecosystems which stop working. Land system change that tracks the transformation of land surface, especially from forest to agricultural land, and it of course affects biodiversity and carbon storage. Freshwater use refers to the consumption of freshwater resources and its impact on the water cycles. Ocean acidification is caused by the absorption of carbon dioxide in the oceans, which changes the chemistry of seawater, which in turn affects marine life. There's also the geochemical flows, which tracks human-caused disturbances of the natural cycles of elements like nitrogen and phosphorus. To summarize that, this is basically industrial agriculture. You also have atmospheric aerosol loading, which tracks the microscopic particles in the atmosphere. This is air pollution. The stratospheric ozone depletion. The ozone layer, as you all know, protects us from harmful ultraviolet radiations. There's also chemical pollution and novel entities. So this tracks the introduction of new substances like radioactive materials or microplastics or GMOs, which all have different impacts on the environment. So that's it for the 9 boundaries, and 6 of those are either already exceeded or about to exceed the limits. And for example, the European Union indicates in its environmental action program that by 2050, Europeans should live well within the planetary boundaries. Next slide, please. So now here is our shared roadmap for peace and prosperity for people and the planet now and into the future. You've seen this before. These are the SDGs. It's 17 very big ideas to make the world better, fairer, and healthier for everyone by the year 2030. So they all tackle the world's most pressing social problems, things like poverty, inequality, access to education, and healthcare. And they are the essential social foundations without which neither climate action nor economic systems can function effectively. So failing to achieve the SDGs means that we're leaving people behind, which ultimately undermines the stability and fairness and resilience for any green or inclusive transition to succeed. Next slide, please. So the UNEP has a very broad definition of green economy, which will do great for today's exercise. So it's on screen. I'll just read it out briefly. An economy that results in improved human well-being and reduced inequalities over the long term, while not exposing future generations to significant environmental risks and ecological shortages. And I think you'll agree that in many ways, it is the exact inverse of the economic models that we see today. So humanity's 21st century challenge is to balance out the needs of all within the means of the planet. And this is the light green circle on the donut diagram that you have in front of you. So in other words, to ensure that no one falls short on humans' life essentials, like from food, housing, healthcare, political voices, while also ensuring that we collectively do not exceed the pressure on Earth life-supporting systems, then we need to be in that little green area in the middle of the donut. And so between the social and the planetary boundaries is this environmentally safe and socially just space in which humanity can thrive. And that is the green, fair, and sustainable society. Next slide, please. So if you plot the planetary boundaries over the SDG metrics, you get this. And it's called the donut economics. And this is basically for all of us who work in sustainability and development and education. This is our compass. This is what sustainability actually means. So let's look at what it would look like if you actually plotted that for two countries. Next slide, please. So I took two extreme examples, Germany and Ethiopia. So you clearly see that the different countries have different priorities. Sometimes it's to ensure the social foundations. That's the case of Ethiopia, where actually the material footprint and planetary boundaries are not exceeded by far. However, the social foundations do need to be brought back into the circle. And it's basically the inverse for Germany, where the social foundations are mostly achieved, but the environmental impact is way too high. So this was the point. Decarbonization is only one of the sustainability dimensions, and these are all of them. Next slide, please. So we now see the employment impact of the megatrends that are forecasted by the World Economic Forum, who surveyed their members last year. And you can see that at the top, digitalization is a major job destructor and creator, I should say. But you can also see that reducing carbon emissions and adapting to climate change comes right behind, and probably with resulting in over 8 million jobs created. So that's an interesting perspective because the World Economic Forum are largely the largest multinationals in the world, and when they start something, usually it sets a trend. So let's look at whether because these are only projections and claims, you could say, well, you know, how do we know that actually worked out? So I just wanted to show what large multinationals intend to do. And now let's look at how this plays out on the labor market. Next slide, please. And so you can see that, yes, it does affect the labor market because both AI and green jobs are growing very fast throughout Europe. You can see it in front of you. I don't need to explain this visual. Next slide, please. So one may say, okay, so there's more green jobs, normal classical jobs are being greener, but which sectors? And so bear with me, this one I needed to explain what we're looking at. So greenness measures the proportion of green skills within the total skill set required for jobs, while the green pervasiveness measures how common it is for job postings to mention at least one green skill. So basically, greenness is to quantify the number of green jobs within a sector, while green pervasiveness tells you how an entire sector is greening up, irrespective of how many green jobs it has. So even though many sectors don't have that many green jobs as we conceive them, the need for green skills increases in all sectors. And you can see that in front of you. There's not one sector that is not greening up. So I'll move on to the next slide, please. So the point here is to show that not all jobs will be affected in the same way. There are degrees of greenness. Some jobs emerge, some jobs are transformed completely, others are just influenced. So like, for example, a car mechanic needs upskilling to work with electric vehicles. A banker needs to understand environmental regulations and ethical investing. A farming technician needs to understand precision irrigation, and a medical professional also needs to understand the environmental impacts on human health and plastic waste. So not all jobs are affected equally, but all jobs are affected, and we'll probably get to a labor market in the future where all jobs are green. Next slide, please. So this is courtesy of LinkedIn, so to be interpreted with caution, as their data is systematically based on users' claims, and we often, I think, exaggerate our claims on LinkedIn. So you need to interpret this with caution, but it does give you a quick overview of which sectors and industries are most affected based on the data of LinkedIn, which covers basically, it's only rich countries. They don't really operate in low and mid-income economies. So this is data for basically the US, Europe, Australia, Japan, etc., the OECD member states. So let's see. Yeah. So it shows that some sectors are most affected by greening, and no surprises. Construction, energy, agri-food are most affected. This is not a surprise if you look at the planetary boundaries and the SDGs. Agriculture and construction, fossil fuel intensive sectors are clearly the ones that are expected to change most drastically and most urgently. And it shows on this graph. So next slide, please. So now we look at who needs these skills. So we often think that green skills are reserved for engineers and highly skilled professionals. The research so far is a little nuanced. And so this is courtesy of IRENA, which stands for the International Renewable Energy Agency. And they do great work on all that is linked to renewable energy, as their name implies. Here they tell us that when it comes to jobs in the photovoltaic sector, actually it's workers and technicians that are most in demand, with experts only making up a small proportion of the growth in demand. So an interesting perspective, which I think often surprises people. Next slide, please. And here we look at I'm sorry, you can't read it at the bottom. I'll let you know what this is. This is a similar analysis, but done by different people. This is by CDFOP, and they looked at water and waste management sectors. And again, we see that manual and elementary occupations are also in high demand. And this has clear implications for the fair transition principle, where we leave no one behind, meaning that employment opportunities and income generation are also part of the green transition, including for workers with lower education attainment, not to mention NEETs or refugees or vulnerable groups. Next slide, please. So here we look at the occurrence of online job vacancies, which can be easily, and this is one of the beauties of online job vacancies, they can easily be scrapped by AI and analyzed to a degree that would be impossible for any human to do. And that's exactly what you've got in front of you. The European Commission set up this LLM that scrapes all the online job vacancies and runs analysis. So these are all the job vacancies that include at least one green skill. So this is not strictly speaking green jobs, but any occupation that includes at least one green skill. And what you can see that it's only growing. It's getting greener everywhere. The intensity has decreased in southern Italy and Greece, but overall, we can see it's going faster in the west and the north, as opposed to the south and east. So next slide, please. And so here I also show some data which is gathered with the same principle, presented slightly differently. This is something that ETF has been responsible for, and we looked at a number of countries outside the EU because that's where we work most and that's what interests us most. And interestingly, this page does not have the name of the country, and I wonder if you guys can all guess which one it is by just looking at the map. I will let you know to break the suspense. It's Egypt, of course. And so we see that when you look at Egyptians' online job vacancies, that they show that clean energy is the sector that demands the most, and that the demand is also growing rapidly, and that is not the same everywhere. So that gives us some insights that the growth or the growth in demand for green skills is not equal nationwide. Clearly, this is linked to large renewable energy projects, which are mostly in areas where you have either wind or sun or any other resource. And so it's not the same everywhere. And this has implications for policymakers. Let's look at the other slide. Next slide, please. So this is the same here, a different country, but very similar findings. The demand is growing, as you can see from the graph at the bottom left, and it's not the same everywhere. There are regions that are affected faster than others. Let's look at the next slide. This was Morocco. Next slide. Okay, this one, I'm not sure why the map didn't show up. This is Kenya. Interesting fact, this is the one where we see the highest growth for green skills out of all the countries that we've looked at. So this is a really interesting case study for us, and we'll be looking into it more throughout actually the fourth quarter of this year. We should be doing some more work on that. But so what do we see here? Same thing, sustainable energy, agriculture. These are sectors that demand the most green skills for all the countries that we've looked at. So this is an interesting finding for policymakers, of course. Next slide, please. So now we discuss how to best deploy these skills. So here in front of you, you have this diagram that represents a skilling ecosystem for the green transition, at least in the way that we see it at ETF, trying to include all the elements that are important in our view. And so you basically end up with a collaborative network involving governments, educational institutions, industries, communities, all working together to develop and implement training programs that equip all the individuals with the necessary skills. And you notice here, this will become more relevant later, that in terms of skills supply, so the education and training institutions that supply the skills on the market, we include all of them, from preschool to adult learning, including non-formal education, because they all matter, and they will become clear in a little bit. So this integrated approach it helps us ensure that industries evolve towards greener practices. The workforce is prepared through continuous learning and reskilling opportunities. The idea that you train once in your life is now completely over. You need reskilling throughout your career. And this diagram shows that by emphasizing adult learning at the top of the supply. Next slide, please. And so now let's look at what we mean by green skills exactly. There's different frameworks, of course, but one way that we have found that is actually quite useful at ETF and the EU institutions more broadly is to unpack it into 3 categories. And so there they are in front of you: technical, transversal, values, and attitudes. So let's go through them and explain what we mean here. So on top, you would have the technical skills. So those are occupation and sector specific. For example, it would be the ability to dimension a solar heating system for a hotel. This is something that you can learn through a VET program rather quickly. And that's basically, these are the skills that are being tracked when you look at some of the visuals that I showed that talk about how green skills demand is growing. These are the skills that are being tracked. The others are much more, let's say, need more definitions and metrics to be tracked. What we talk about when we talk about green skills growth is the technical skills. And interestingly, those are often the easiest to learn because, to become an energy auditor or to learn to use, to fix and maintain electric engines or to learn to install heat pumps. This is usually some things that skills that you can acquire through a very good VET programs in, between 6 months and 1 year. So that's one part of the full green skills definition. And it's the most important one, but also the easiest one. The others are much more complicated, and it will become clearer just now. So next we have the transversal skills, and okay, we call them like that, but you could say the enabling skills. Sometimes they're called horizontal skills. And so these are not job specific, they're not sector specific. You can, once you've developed these skills, they're with you and you can transfer them to any job. And those are basically the ability to learn the technical skills. So for example, you cannot learn how to dimension a solar system if you don't understand science, technology, engineering, and math STEM, if you don't understand ICT, at least basically, if you can't work in a team, etc., etc. So these are all the skills that you develop throughout secondary to an extent tertiary level that are not specifically green, but that you will absolutely need in order to get to the technical skills, because the technical skills, in most cases, at least what we see, is that it involves some digital knowledge and lots of STEM in many, many cases. And then we get to the last one, but I mean, last but not least, certainly not, the values and attitudes, or even morals, you can say. So these are the attitudes and the behaviors, the green mindset, sometimes it's called, and that lets you take professional decisions that consider what's best for life forms on the planet. So you're not just looking at human interests or your company's bottom line. You develop a worldview throughout your life, but it starts in kindergarten. This is something that is most difficult because it's very challenging to change people's values and attitudes, and certainly their moral foundations is something that that you develop throughout your life. It depends a lot also on genetics, but it's something that takes time, and that right from preschool and kindergarten, you already develop your relation with nature. And that, of course, affects how you will, whether you will have a pro-environmental attitude in the future. Let's look at the next slide, please. So let's go a little bit deeper in the green mindset. This is one of the frameworks in these. It's called the Sustainability Competence Framework. It was designed by the European Commission basically just after the European Green Deal in 2019, where in fact, we chatted about that in the first breakout group. The European Green Deal made some very bold decisions as to how we need to change our economies and therefore people's training. But there was, of course, no common language on how do we measure that. Have we managed to improve people's green competencies? You know, in order to figure that out, you need to agree on a structure that allows you to measure it. And so they came up with this one, and it's been only increasing in popularity. Let's go a little bit through it, so that because it can be a little bit overwhelming at first. It uses fancy words like embodying and embracing, but let's go through it quickly, and so you'll see it's not that complicated. So it breaks it down into, and it's in front of you, you can see it: understanding the complexity of sustainability, embracing it, envisioning better futures, and acting for sustainability. And this is because research has shown, the OECD was the first one, but there were others afterwards, that being climate aware is good, but it's not enough. And broadly understanding sustainability is just not enough. You need to go further. So you need to go further and understand your own personal and professional role, but also believe that action is possible. You can be very climate aware, but think, well, it doesn't matter because, you know, it's too late. That's not being competent from that perspective. So let's start with what is possibly the most important one, and it's called embodying sustainability values, is the one on the top right. And this is our ability to reflect and challenge our own personal values and worldviews in terms of sustainability. So it requires that you appreciate equity, justice for current and future generations, and also perceive humans as part of nature. And we all know many stakeholders who do not appreciate that fully, who don't think that humans are fully part of nature, that human activity and nature are two different things, or that future generations should be given consideration in policy decisions. This is, of course, a major issue, and this is exactly what this dimension of the green competency is tracking. So let's break it down further, and you can do that by breaking down into knowledge, skills, and attitude. So for that particular competence, the corresponding knowledge would be to know the main views on sustainability. For example, are you able to differentiate anthropocentrism, technocentrism, ecocentrism? Do you know what each of these concepts assume? What are these approaches and what arguments they support? So that would be what you would need to develop in terms of knowledge. And then the skill would be the ability to articulate these different perspectives and understand that there are different views and be able to argue in favor or against one of them. For example, to be more concrete, technocentrism is the idea that, well, climate change doesn't really matter because we will find a technological solution to everything. Of course, that's never going to work, and you need to understand why and be able to argue against that. That's the idea. But it's both behavior and skill, but there's also the attitude, and the attitude would be the willingness to act in line with the principle of sustainability. So, for example, a person who has embodied sustainability will be able to contemplate the impact of fast fashion or weekend flights in terms of sustainability versus consumerism. Or it would be able to consider the carbon footprint of the products that they procure on their job needs. For example, a cook would prefer to buy local organic produce as opposed to industrial produce that were flown around the globe. So that's one of them. So another one which I really I think is very, very important is the one on the top left. It's the acting for sustainability. So that encourages learners to take action at individual and collective level to shape sustainable futures. So it invites the learners to demand action from those responsible to make change happen. So again, the corresponding knowledge is to know the policies that assign responsibility for environmental damage, like, for example, the idea that polluters pay. That's not clear to everyone. It should be. For example, there's lots of SMEs and large multinationals that abuse this lack of knowledge by making the consumer responsible for the recycling. Coca-Cola is an example. They write on all their products, oh yeah, it's great because now you can recycle our products. But actually, the polluter is responsible for recycling, not the consumer. And this is clear in all regulations. So understanding that fully as a consumer helps you act for sustainability. So that would be the knowledge. You understand that, well, actually, no, polluters pay. I understand that principle. And so the skill related to that would be the ability to identify who are the relevant social and political, economic stakeholders in your community or region to address a sustainability issue. And then the attitude would be to demand political accountability. Why is the polluters pay principle not being applied to this or that producer? And a classic example that is used to explain this is how young people have been especially vocal in demanding political action by governments. I mean, I can mention Fridays for the Future movement, which has been quite successful, or there's also the Extinction movement. So those are how they have actually played out and utilized their understanding of how do you act for sustainability. And I believe this is all the time we have. So I'll conclude with this. I think the environment is where we all meet, where we all have a mutual interest. It's the one thing that we all share, and we all have different starting points, of course, but we share the same destination. And therefore, a successful transition to a green economy requires that we systematically reorient our education system and our TVET systems, particularly. I hope this has helped you frame and demystify some of the concepts. We'll be talking more. Thank you for your attention.
May I please ask a question?
Please, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much for the insightful presentation. I think there was a slide which caught my attention where I saw that of all the other areas where we have greenness and green pervasiveness by sector in 2024 in EU, when we go to education, I didn't see any other sign that the greening concept is being taken into consideration, although I know it is. How would you explain that? For example, when you look at construction, it's quite clear until we get to manufacturing. It's quite clear that at least some greening is taking place. Is it that the degree to which education is maybe accepted and is working on greening is something which is not so significant? How would you explain that?
So if I understand your question, you're asking about the disconnect between the greening for certain sectors and the lack of greening of the corresponding education systems?
Yes, particularly if you see the slides, I can see the slide on page 20. Look at education. There's nothing which is showing that something significant is being done in the education sector.
Right.
Yet,
Yeah, yeah, I get you now. Okay, yeah, right. I get you. Well, I mean, it's not nothing, but yes, it's not the fastest of the sectors. That's a really interesting observation. Thank you for pointing that out. For us, education specialists, we should reflect on that. You're right. Are we doing enough? No, we're not. I mean, there's increasing evidence that I mean, for example, one data point that always that really spoke to me is when the ILO looked at secondary school curricula throughout. I'm going to say throughout the world. It was not every country in the world, but it was more than half of the countries, including low, mid, and high income. And this was only like 2 years ago, and they concluded that more than half of world curricula, school curricula, do not mention climate change once. That to me, that was a striking example of how education really needs to catch up. And this is and I mean, there's many explanations for that, no justifications, but explanation. Education is rarely the most at the front sector, and this is partially why we advocate for more research and development, for universities to work with the private sector, and also vet courses where you do your learning with the enterprises. I mean, partially. And when it comes to green technology, I mean, first of all, that point is true for basically any sector. I mean, digital is the same. But when it comes to green technology, because it's so expensive and it keeps changing, nobody can expect any school to keep up with the rates of technological development. And therefore, the partnering with the private sector is absolutely essential. And to a degree that is likely to mitigate what you spotted, the fact that the education sector is not changing fast enough. But one way to mitigate that is to work with the private sector because they have to.
thank you very much.
There's a question in the chat about the dashboards that you shared, if they are accessible for everyone.
Yes. Maybe I spoke too quick. Yeah, I believe they are. And I can send you the link, which you can share with the participants afterwards.
Okay, Thank you.
That's okay. There's another question here.
Bisala, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Roman. And just mine is more of a kind of addition to what Dr. Violet said. Is there a way this framework can be customized to be used by teachers in the school? Because, you know, like in my country, even though the Green Initiative is on in Nigeria, but there's little or no impact so far. Even the TVET we talk about in Nigeria, the response is not really giving that effect. So I just want to know if the framework can be customized to be used in this. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Because I mean, it was developed by the European Commission, which is a public body that oversees all the different member states of the EU, and there's lots of diversity, of course. So it's only a framework, which you are then, of course, free to adapt to your context. I think the beauty of this framework is that, you know, it does not make any presumptions on your income level or the kinds of jobs that you're preparing for. It really, I think, is adaptable to basically any situation. But of course, you know, feel free to inspire yourself from it and use whatever bits you find most appropriate for your needs. But I should say that, and I hope you will talk about this more with Paeradigm later with Nina and Carol and the whole team, because one of the things that has also been developed, and I didn't have time to go into it today, is a tool that was developed in order to apply this framework on your curriculum. So basically, it's like a set of questions. In fact, it looks like a card game, but it's a bunch of cards that help you through questions, help you work out how could you include, for example, embodying sustainability in one of your classes. How long would it take? You know, which keywords would you need to use? What practical exercise are possible? It's a really handy tool that is increasingly popular, and I think that's okay. We all have that.
Yeah.
He's interested in sustainability, future engineers. And so yeah, I can also send you the link to the page that explains a little bit about this too. But I mentioned Paeradigm because Paeradigm has done lots of work on actually teaching how to use this tool. So maybe this is something that you can discuss afterwards. But I'll send you the link.
Oh, I think we are a little bit smaller group, which is good. We have very little time to do a synthesis. So I think we can cycle through the groups for a 1-minute debrief of maybe the most interesting point that you discussed. So please go ahead, Samir. Can you start us off?
Yes, sure. We have been quite a small group in our exchange, and we have focused mainly on the field of education and economy. And we have discussed that the schools or education can play a crucial role in promoting trust, also institutions, and also by providing success stories in the environmental sphere, combined with civic education also, that being active can change something in the long run. Furthermore, that in education, placards in schools and signs can help to raise awareness among the students on environmental topics, and they can share it also with their parents. Equally, also when they experience nature or the harms done by environmental destruction in nature, when they see it with their own eyes, when as part of the school curriculum. With regards to the economy, we were talking about with recycling, the opportunities of circular economies, and that in the end, the economic incentive can lead to environmental friendly actions, even without really considering the environment. This might be more the part of education then.
Thanks a lot. That's really interesting. And Marianne, anything different?
Yes, hello. I'll be very quick. We had Romain with us in the group, and we really took advantage of having him with us. We asked many questions, but we also had some discussions. We started with the question if we want to have green skills, if it makes more sense coming from top down or bottom up. We circled around this question a little bit. Then we talked about how to take the society into the whole topic, how we can get into a dialogue with the society, get an active society. We had a best practice from Senegal right in the end, where he shared how they work with different universities, that they have like 4 universities joining together and trying together in an interdisciplinary way to transmit green skills.
That sounds very good. Thanks. Oula, group 3.
Yeah, so we had a great conversation and sharing of experiences from different countries, from Zambia and Togo, and also, Ghana, and from Senegal and Turkey. And my colleagues all agreed on the importance of education to make the green transition. And they also highlighted kind of a motivation to learn about policies and regulations. And the motivation is really also to be able to apply to funds and grants related to projects for their countries. And there was a great highlight from Violet about the issue, and it was really highlighted for digital transition, about when we create a solution and in front of it we create many other problems that need new solutions. And something that we might all reflect about in the different contexts. So this is briefly what we've done, and I maybe give more time for my colleagues from the other groups now. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Nina, you're muted.
You are muted. You are muted.
I'm mute. Yes, thank you. We had a great group representing Sierra Leone, Ghana, Algeria, Egypt, Tunisia, and Switzerland. So fantastic group. And one of your colleagues is as well, Violet, very really appreciated. So we got stuck on the education. We couldn't get much further because there were lots of themes that emerged. And we discussed the role of schools and educators in shaping environmental consciousness. At the same time, and there's some points. Then we had teaching methods and pedagogical innovation. We talked about community engagement and partnerships, really, really important. I will quote just 2 or 3 little examples. And then we also really thought there needs to be much more of an analysis on barriers and structural challenges. But there were some wonderful examples. One of the things was really, which was brought from Sierra Leone, that solar panels are actually installed on roofs of schools, and really to live what you preach, but also community engagement in after-school activities with kids, where they go out and plant trees, clean up waste, and so on and so forth. And that was really also then picked up again in Ghana, where from the quality agency, you go and work actually with schools again, with community engagement. So community engagement is really something where educational institutions are opening up to their environment and engaging with community. And at the same time, these youth experiences actually, they experience what we are teaching, number one, and then the organization lives what it teaches. I think that is also something that is not to be underestimated. It's probably more powerful than anything else. We also talked about the teaching methods moving more towards problem-based learning, active learning, service learning, integrating sustainability into education. We talked about curriculum update or reviews that don't happen quite often, but the pedagogy plays an important role also in operationalizing the curriculum. You can develop the nicest curricula, but to make them come alive, you need the pedagogical part. And pedagogy for teaching sustainability, and we said actually green skills, maybe we should really talk more about the just transition, ecologically, economically, and socially just, and not just green. The pedagogical side is important. Community engagement, partnership, adding to Sierra Leone, those solar panels were given by companies that produce solar panels, on the roof. So in partnership with the private sector. And then barriers and structural challenges. Tamer from Tunisia said that what they see in Tunisia is that a lot of students are hesitant to choose a program that trains for new green jobs. They are very much afraid of not finding employment. So they've actually had to close down some projects. So the question is there a good match between actually employment, the need of the market, and then the programs that higher education institutions produce? And last but not least, we still feel that this green skills is a high-level policy talk, and it's very hard to understand what does it actually mean. It's all very fluffy and not very concrete for a lot of us, because breaking it down to what does it mean in concrete terms. Thank you. Thank you to the group. Great group.
Thank you, Nina. Jessica, group 5.
Yes, we've been through all the three theses. So we identified basic education as the key for shaping green values, but are often overlooked in favor of TVET. We had an example from South Africa where we've noticed that projects show that short-term training alone is not enough. Behavior change and long-term thinking are needed. Also, one example in Tunisia where they're working to green its economy through a more inclusive approach and better access to the market. So the partnerships are seen as essential for this progress. Also, in digital transition, we also saw that digital tools can support sustainability, but they remain underused or misaligned. So behavior change is critical. It's not all about everything being digital. We should focus on the behavior, on the attitudes. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. So now, Romain, are you ready to come back in and try to help us make sense of everything all together? A quick synthesis.
Yes, with pleasure. So I think we all agree that this green transition, this drive for sustainability, moving to a green economy puts a huge responsibility on education and training systems. I think we all agree with that. And we also realize that this is not happening in vacuum. We must consider the context, a context of very rapidly changing geopolitics. For example, the disappearance of USAID and the reduction of investments in renewable energy. This will have an impact eventually on our lives. There's also the issue of migration, of increasing poverty, which climate change is not going to help. It's only going to make it worse. So, I mean, I think overall, we really need to accelerate. The current pace of change is way too slow. And ways to accelerate is to consider education and training not as initial education for young people to develop a climate awareness or environmental awareness, but to take that much further and consider the entire working population too. This includes adults. We cannot wait for young learners to be active in the labor market for the change to happen. It needs to happen yesterday. And so adult workers, mid-career professionals need to consider that too. Their skills need to be updated. And so some of the inspiring practices that I've heard from today include that's obvious, but does not happen everywhere. Developing and introducing new courses for new technologies. In my group, we had the chance to listen listen to the experience of Senegal, which has established 4 masters in renewable energy, biomass, and other subjects. There's also we also talked about how we cannot address the issues of environmental degradation and inequality if we're thinking the way that we thought when we created the problem. Innovation to me has never sounded so important in any field. We need to innovate the way we learn. And there's many digital tools, of course, exponentially increase the ways in which we can learn. But there's also this revival, and we talked about that also in our group, of the interdisciplinary learning, where you approach a societal issue from many different perspectives, not limited to the silo thinking of having just, the engineer give his solution or the social scientist give his solution, but we work together across our disciplines to find solutions to real life problems. So interdisciplinary, project-based, these are issues that need to grow. They already exist, but we need to help them grow. There's also I didn't hear that much about it, but I would like to insist on the relevance, the work-based learning and the links, the bridges between education and the private sector. You learn best when you are actually spending time with the workers. This time spent with workers, looking at how they operate that technology, how they maintain that technology, this is priceless for a learner. It will teach you much more than any theoretical courses. So the issues of work-based learning, apprenticeship, or sometimes it's called dual learning, depending on the country. These are really, really important, and they need to grow further. And then there's 3 things that I think, going back to adults and the need for our education systems and training systems to also consider the need of adult learners. There are a number of programs that aim to push for the development of, for example, micro-credentials. Increasingly, people do micro-learning, possibly due to social media having taken over our lives. A lot of our learning is really in little bits in bite size throughout a certain period. And recognizing that through micro-credentials that you can stack and add in a flexible manner. So you can do like 2 credits this week, 15 credits next month, and wait, and then next year you finish it. And in the end, you get a proper qualification that will make you competitive on the labor market and get you that recruitment that you want. Micro-credential is something that is growing in importance, and I think it's part of how we innovate in the way we learn. And just to finish off, Nina was mentioning the importance of having a green campus and exposing the learners to the technology right where they learn. So of course, ideally, you do that while you work at the firm, work and learn at the firm. But schools that are covered in solar panels, or other green tech is a great opportunity to expose the learners to that. And also working closely with the community. So maybe organizing work-based learning with the local SMEs that are progressive and have integrated green processes. So the idea that schools become not simply a collection of teachers, but really agents of change at the community level. I think increasingly that's where we're going, and that's what I think what we need also. And I think we throughout our discussions, we touched upon all the issues that make a campus greener and more modern. I'll leave it at that.